So we are going to tackle a Nand on a 7 Plus today. I want to show you the process of removing it, reballing, and putting it back on. So this is an iCloud lock board because I do want to practice on it with you guys and show you the process of doing it. So we will be putting a slightly different Nand on, just so you know. Let me get this adjusted properly. Alright. Alright, so your first step is removing the underfill that's currently around the Nand, which is going to be right here. It's all the way around. And this other underfill over here is actually components. So the big thing about underfill is when you apply heat, it expands. So what you want to do is anywhere you're working with heat, you're going to want to remove the underfill away from those components and around it. If you don't, the heat will expand that underfill and it will pull components off the board. So let's go ahead and get this underfill removed off this board so we can get this Nand removed. So I'm going to place a heatsink because it's a little easier to work with. It keeps the board weight down. So we're going to go that route real quick. So for removing underfill, you always want to use 225 Celsius. And I use an airflow of between 30 to 40. Either one's fine. You just want it good enough where it doesn't blow components off or it doesn't actually heat components. So we are going to set ours to 40. I like a little more air. I'm just going to be a little more careful with it. Alright, so when you're heating up underfill, you don't necessarily have to do a circular motion because it's not hot enough to actually heat any components. So just kind of let it get heated real quick and then we can scratch away the underfill. See, there we go. It's coming off really easy now. It does take a minute, so you don't want to rush it. And remember when you're doing this, you don't want to pry at things because you can still knock components off even though you're not heating the board enough. A lot of people use X-Acto knives on this kind of process, but I'm a little more comfortable with the hook. It comes on a handle and you can buy a pack for about $14 online. I normally order mine from China. You can get them for about probably like $5. I'm almost done on this side. I like to get all of the underfill away. That way we're not moving anything. Because if you pull the stand off, it's going to take these components with it. Alright, so let's work on the side now. So I kind of rest the tip on the Nand because it's not really hot enough to damage it. But I really don't want to damage this Nand. I know it's iCloud locked, but it is a 128 gigabyte Nand, so I kind of want to keep it. Now let's go ahead and start on the bottom. Just keep in mind that this board is actually really hot. It can burn you. And depending on the hot air station you have, it could actually time out on you. So you have to kick it on again. I think it's just my version though. I've got that JBC. A lot of times you can't get this perfect, but you can get it good enough where the underflow doesn't pull any components off. Alright, last side. I'll go ahead and move this a little better so you can see it. So for heatsink, I use a big block of steel. Makes an incredible heatsink, especially if you're working by the CPU or somewhere important. Okay. Alright, so it looks like the underfill stage is done. So the next stage is I'm going to increase my air to 360, well, my heat to 365. I'm going to increase my air to, let's go 70. Remember, it's 3/4 to 4/5 that you want to go on your total airflow. So, alright, so the most important part of working with these boards and getting big and large components off, or tricky components, is you want to assess where you're working. So you're going to look and see what components are around the NAND. So let's go ahead and look at ours. And the way you get this black tape off, so this is actually, this heatsink's hollow. As you can see, that movement, it's actually hollow. They're not all like that. It just kind of varies. Alright, so let's look and see what we're working with. Alright, so you got your audio IC over here, this large chip. 7 Plus audio IC is notorious for losing a couple contacts on this side over here. The C12, I believe. Normally it's like the C12 and D12. Typically requires certain jumpers, but we'll come back at that at a later time. Let me get this off. You want to get all this tape off because it's actually copper lined, and it can short out components. Alright, so we have your audio IC over here. Alright, so we got some large components looks like we got what, backlight over here. So we got large components on both sides. It looks like these are a little more closer than the others, so we are going to put the shield on that side. Now next thing you want to do is address at what angle you are coming at, because this chip is actually underfilled underneath it. So when you apply heat and you heat the solder, it doesn't necessarily mean that chip's coming up. You're going to have to get a utensil or a tool under the chip like this and kind of just pry up a little bit, but don't actually pry. You just gotta be very gentle. It's only when the underfill is ready to give. So what we are going to do, let me find it. We're going to use this tool. It's the same as that hook. But what happens is, in this instance, I'm coming from this angle because there's no components. And it looks like I could fit this without hitting anything. So when I get some heat applied, I'm going to gently slide this under the chip and kind of wiggle it just a little bit when I think the solder is actually melted. This should give it enough wiggle to the underfill giving away. So let's go ahead and try that out and see how that works real quick for us. So first things first, like we've covered in all of our videos, you always want to apply flux. Does reduce the amount of heat that you need to apply and makes it a little easier because we're dealing with unleaded solder, which requires a temperature of 222 or 223 to actually melt, versus like the 183 on leaded solder, which that's what we use nowadays when we do our repairs. Alright, so we're doing 365 on Celsius on air, 70 on air. I am using a JBC machine. If you're using the Quicks or any of the other machines, you may need either a higher temperature or a lower temperature with a different airflow. It's an exact science, and you gotta kind of experiment to get the right one. So always experiment on donor bores, never your client. So let's turn on the air filtering system because I don't want to breathe this in. Alright, so let's go ahead and get the heat applied to this and see if we can get this off. So always keep a circular motion. You don't want to overheat one part of the chip and not the other. And you will overheat one spot if you're working at it like that. So you just gently take it in. I kind of scratch at it a little bit because there's underfill that you need to get loose to get in. I'm gonna put something in front of that board so it doesn't move on me. Alright, there we go. A lot of people use jigs for this. That way the board doesn't move and it's solid and you can work on any part you want. That's totally up to you. So as you can see, my tool's going in really easy. Part of that's because I have this higher air, which is set at 70, and 365 is kind of my go-to temperature for everything. So kind of go in. Once you can get it going in almost all the way and kind of get that movement, keep in mind that means one side is heated, but you want to make sure your other side's heated. There we go. So that is a perfect lift. I will show you the pads, that way you can see what I'm talking about. Don't need air now. As you can see, there's no pulled pads. And there is a lot of underfill. This stuff right here. Actually, it's probably on the board. Let me see. So for testing, we're going to put on a 16 gig Nand. Alright. So this underfill is right here. You see that gunk? I'm scratching that. So, like we covered in the beginning of the video, it is underfill. One way of getting rid of underfill is actually doing 225 Celsius with a 40 to, well, between a 30 and 50 air, and just gently pick at it. Like I said, I always use the hook. It is my best friend when it comes to underfill. Makes things a little easier. So let's go ahead and get through the prep stage. That means clean all this underfill off and get our chip reballed, which we'll cover that as well. So we're setting 225. And I'm just going to use 40 air. It makes it a little easier. I'm used to this, so I use a little higher air. So you don't really have to do the circular motion, because as fast as you're going to be working, you're kind of working in one spot anyways. Instead of doing this all day, as you can see, it's kind of a pain. Let's jump to what I like to do. You are going to need a full-size soldering iron with somewhat of a small tip. We are going to apply your flux, of course. We are going to apply that flux and solder to all these pads over here. And we are going to get these pads nice and flush. And this braid will kind of loosen up the underfill as well. So you do need soldering braid, which I'll grab mine right now and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Alright, soldering braid. Always start with I'll show you what you don't start with. Soldering braid is a mixture, and it's braided like you would do hair, but it's all copper. It could be different metals, it could be copper, anything that would stick the leaded solder to it. So it'd be a certain kind of metal. So this is a tip I've used before. You don't want to use that because it's dirty and it's filled with solder and it's not exactly flush. So I just clip that off and I use my full-size soldering iron, apply solder to the end of it. So full size, this is what I use. It's not really a full size, but it's pretty good for micro soldering, which I use a Weller soldering station, just a single port. So you mount this, get it nice and full. You just run it over all these pads. You're now reducing the temperature it requires to heat this because it's leaded solder. Remember, leaded solder melts at 183 Celsius. Alright, so that's ready for me. So we got the solder on there. Your next step is to apply your soldering braid. And you just put the soldering braid down nice flat and put your iron over top. You just take it over. It's almost like scrubbing away corona disease or virus. The reason for that joke is we're actually in the middle of a coronavirus epidemic in my area. So I get to sit here and make videos for you guys all day. So it's kind of nice. Alright, so your pads are flush. They're all the way down to the copper contacts, which their solder is why it doesn't look like copper. We are going to take some Q-tips with isopropyl alcohol, or we're going to do acetone, which we will do alcohol for right now. I kind of like hitting it with alcohol to clean up all the messy stuff, and then to come behind it with acetone to get away any kind of residues that's left. And acetone, your best acetone to use is just nail polish remover. It's supposed to be pure acetone, but I also like going to hardware store buying the big bottle of acetone that painters would use. So looking at this Nand, with the Nand spot sets, you can tell it's a PCIe. You see these 2 extra contacts on both ends, so that's PCIe. So that's a little bit of a smaller Nand. Nands are pretty universal. Your PCIe's go to PCIe's, get the same size and layout. But each board comes with kind of a different Nand. So you'll get like Toshiba, Hynix, Sky, Toshiba's, kind of a bunch of different brands, but you can use any as long as your orientation's correct, which we will cover here in a minute. It's pretty much just the dot that's currently on top of the Nand, and it tells you in what position it currently sets. And you always want to put it on correctly, because otherwise, just like putting a hard drive into a computer, it won't recognize it. Alright, so it has a little residue, and as you can look, if you've seen it beforehand, the area was actually covered everywhere with the underfill, but as you can see, it took away a lot of it. That's kind of why we want to do that step first. Alright, so let's go ahead and remove the rest of it. You just kind of scrape at it. Just come off pretty easy. Don't scrape too hard, because you'll go down to the next layer, which is copper, and you'll have to mask it off. Yeah, it looks like it's pretty good amount over here. I suggest using 70 air, 365 heat on the Nands, especially because you gotta remember it's a pretty large chip you're heating. And if you underheat it, you're gonna pull stuff. You're gonna pull your pads. You're gonna damage your Nand. And you're not going to really perfect it if you can't really learn the proper steps. So, really don't want to misguide you there. And as you can see, my entry point looks pretty clean. I didn't knock anything off over here. And I'll show you the entry point. Yeah, as you can see, I went over here, and that component's still there, and the component is still over there. So that's why you always assess on where you go first, because you don't want to go on the wrong angle and knock stuff off. I'm just clean this up a little bit. You want things to look clean for your clients. Normally, standard protocol is anytime you're done soldering, you throw it through an ultrasonic cleaner to get rid of all residues and left behind fluxes and dirt. So I would suggest getting one of those also. Alright, so that is nice and prepped. It's time to prep our Nand now. There's a couple things you're going to need for that. So, let's see. We are going to use this weird Pretty sure it's Toshiba Nand. Yeah, it's a Toshiba. See, T's right here. And this Toshiba layout's always on the bottom like this. So we're gonna flip her over. Alright. So no underfill currently. You got raised pillows on it. As you can see. We need those nice and flat because we need to reball this. So, my little secret, and I came up with it myself. Get you 3 pieces of Kapton tape. Get them put to the side because I'm going to show you something. Alright, you put 1 piece long, like this, sticky side up. The other 2 pieces, sticky side down, you put on top and bottom. And we will address why we're doing that. Alright, so the reason that you really want to do this is, one, it holds your component down. So for instance, the Nand. And I want to show you. So you're looking at the Nand. You see there's still sticky side up around it on the front and bottom, the top and bottom. So what you don't know is when you put your stencil down, which is a thin piece of metal, it is going to adhere to that tape all the way around that Nand. So a lot of people have issues with the stencil sliding everywhere. Well, in our case, the tape holds that down and it's easier to reball. So I struggled for a long time trying to get it to sit still so I don't mess it up, and I came across that one day and it saved me a lot of time. So apply flux, you don't have to go too much. Alright, soldering iron, flux, apply your solder. Just apply it to your tip. Go all the way around your Nand. You just want to make sure all your unleaded solder is mixed with the leaded solder to reduce heating temperature now. Remember, heating temperature is 183. That's the reason we use leaded solder, not unleaded, because unleaded is 222. So soldering braid, which I showed you earlier. Take your iron and just put it on there, nice and flat. There we go. And you just go all around, collecting all that old solder. You don't have to have it perfect. Kind of the idea is to have it flat and matching the rest of your pads. Alright, now pull up your tape and let's clean the Nand and put new tape down. Now the reason that Nand is sliding is because it's got flux on it. It's going to screw up the adhesion. Alright, so I got the Nand pretty clean. Alright, kind of scraping at the top because it was dirty to start with, so it's not nice and clean and looking good for a potential customer. And kind of the important part of doing all this is, even if you're working on iCloud a lot, act like it's a customer's device, because essentially in the end what you want to do is be able to offer these services to your customers. So you need to act like, you know, every day counts and every machine counts. And also, if you're looking to get into like iPads, laptop motherboards, desktop motherboards, we do offer tier 2 training, and I believe the price right now is $1,000, which is the same price as many people's basic training. And so that's the reason I keep my basic training down to $500. Right, tape up. Let's put new tape down. 3 pieces, 1 side up, 2 down. kind of experiment with the tape because some people have shorter pieces, some people have longer pieces. If you think about it, the longer the piece that you have, there's more gripping area for your stencil. Alright, so we are going to look for the Nand real quick. Oh, we found it. Alright, so let me find a stencil that would work and that is actually clean. Alright, this one's dirty, but let me clean it real quick. Kind of the trick that I use to clean my stencils is soldering braid and an iron, and you can even take your hot air up to like 365 and 100 air and put it right on the holes to try to like blow the solder through. Kind of that mix of both things, and you can get it real clean. I've even seen people after doing all that, they throw it in ultrasonic cleaner and it gets it pretty clean as well. Alright. Alright, so let's line this up. So kind of give it a bend, like you're only got your middle down. You don't want anything else down until you have the perfect lay. Then pressed around it. There you go. So as you can see, I'm actually moving the stencil, and that Nand's just sticking right in place. They kind of came out with the new technology for this purpose. They have 3D stencils. They do cost roughly $30, I believe. Versus you can get these old cheapies like I use for $1.95, $2. So I kind of just like the Captain tape and that, because the cool thing is if you're working with chips that don't have stencils yet, you can put these stencils right on top that has the right size holes and apply the solder paste to them and get almost all them filled. We'll cover in a later episode on how you can form your solder balls and then place them on the chip to melt them. You know, trying to work around not having a stencil. Alright, so let me see what solder paste I have real quick. So there's two routes that you can go on solder paste. There is the Amtech, let's see what it's called, Syntech, so S-Y-N Tech. It's a solder paste in a syringe. I haven't used it yet, but a lot of my friends use it, and they tend to like it. But for right now, what we're going to use, because most people do, it's a jar of solder paste, which I'll have all my products listed. That way you know what's using and what you can buy. So looks like my other jar is out, so we're going to open this new jar. The solder paste that I use is called Mechanic Product Model XG-50. And it does come from China, but in all fairness, it is a really good product. I use on a lot of reballs, and I don't ever have issues. And it's cheap. It's like, I think $3. Alright, so you're going to need a thing of solder paste. And my special thing of applying it is a X-Acto knife. I'll show you how to do that in a minute. A lot of people use their finger, but I don't have gloves on and I'm not getting lead poisoning. Keep in mind, that's why we use air filtering systems, because of that. So normally my whole process of putting Nands on and off is actually a lot faster than this, but I really want to be detailed for you guys. Alright, so we're dipping the X-Acto knife in. Applying paste, as you can see, it's kind of wet, and if you want it drier, you could put this on a paper towel and dab it a couple times, like fold it over. So I layer it like I'm doing a cake. This way it gets in every groove, and you put sharp side down, scraping against the stencil. And you can kind of tilt it back and forth if you want to fill more spots. So make sure you get all this off, because when you apply heat to this direct stencil, it will heat everything into solder balls. And you really don't want to mess it. You have to clean up. These jars can last you a few months depending on what kind of jobs you're doing also. They are a lot cheaper than these syringes. I think I paid $40 for a syringe of solder paste. So it's not cheap. Versus, remember the mechanic jar of solder paste is only like $3. Alright. So even because you're applying heat doesn't mean that you're like, oh, well, I'm not holding that stencil down. You still want to hold the stencil down, because with heat and tape, you're heating the adhesion to it, so it's going to lift up. It still helps if you're pressing down. So 365 is what I'm going to heat it on. And this is a science. You really want to get good at this. 60 air. You press down in a non-leaded spot. So I go like here in the middle. Reason being is these stencils like to bend. So if you get it like this, it doesn't bend, and you can get nice, flush, even balls. So kind of just go in a very, very fast circular motion. So you don't want these heating too fast. I'm just trying to get a good grip real quick. Oh yeah, look at that. That's solder porn right there. Alright, and just lift up as soon as they stop heating. When you see they solidify like this, you just pick it up, and the tape will actually hold your chip down like this. So just tape it back down again. Put your stencil aside, because you do need to clean that. Alright, what we're going to do is let's apply heat again. You don't have to really hold it down or anything like that. Just apply the end and make sure they're nice and circle balls. There we go. Now they're looking good. Alright, so 2 steps next. Let's clean it. You want all that flux off. All that nasty flux. And I'm just cleaning with the acetone because it's more of the residue that's left. Alright. So, this is the technique on this. Right, real quick. Take a piece of paper and lay it down like this. It's just normal printing paper. And take this and just kind of scrape it around. What's going to happen is you're going to even out these balls. So if there is any uneven ones, you make them nice and even. Oh yeah, those are perfect. Alright, so step 1, your board is all prepped. You got all the underfill off, you got all the solder off, it's clean, there's no components missing. Remember, if you do miss components, you knock them off, please put them back before you put the Nand on. So what's going to happen is while you're working on that, you're going to overheat that Nand again. You're going to nudge it, you're going to bridge a couple balls, or you're going to overheat the Nand and destroy it. So keep that in mind, make sure you knock that out first. Step 1's done. Step 2, you reball the chip, get all underfill off, even it out with some paper, And she is ready. Step 2 is looking at orientation, which I will show you right now because this is extremely important. Give me one moment. Alright, I'm going to show you my display. My mouse is being funny. Alright. Alright. Minimize, what I minimize that? That's just me. So ZXW. And I'll bring ZXW up. Good old Chinese warnings. Looks like there's an issue with ZXW. Alright, so what you do is with ZXW, it's saying it's already open, my bad. Alright, so it's going to pop up. You're going to look for your model, which ours is Intel right now. I'm going to exit out and go back in. There he is. Alright, so we're going to look for iPhone 7 Plus Intel. Alright, your trick is lay your board down to where you can see your Nand. Look at what way it's laying. If you're looking at this, so this shows you the orientation, you just don't actually, you're not looking for it. So looking at your pads, you find between A1 and A2. So as you see, there's A0 right here. And you look over here, it's A3. So that's your orientation. That's where your dot's going to set. Okay. So we found that. Let's get back to actually soldering it on. Oh, I just realized I didn't have that presented. Okay, let's try it again. Alright, I'm going to minimize this so you can see. Alright, we want iPhone 7 Plus Intel. Alright, so looking down at this, A0 is right here, and A3 is right here. So your dot's going to set right over here because your dot indicates your A1 and your A2. So this is where the dot's going to be. It's going to be on the outside of the board with it facing like this. It's going to be right over here. So let's go ahead and bring this back up. Alright. Now let's go ahead and get this thing soldered. Alright. So where's my Nand? Of course, I put my Nand somewhere. Let me find it. Not really sure where I put my Nand at, which, not a big deal. I've got one sitting over here I can show you. Alright. Alright, so your Nand, which we have a black Toshiba right now. And this one's broken, but it's laying this way, like I showed you guys in the ZXW. This is already somewhat got solder balls, so not a big deal. You're going to put this down and kind of test fit it, see where you want it. So, boom. You got your dot and it's facing down that A1, A2 position. So, next thing to do, remember I say this all the time, soldering flux. Alright, so let's go ahead and put this down. Alright, so just kind of make sure it's centered to where you took it off. So like for example, this is not centered. This goes over here. Hey, this isn't even PCIe, look at that. I'm crazy. Alright, let me grab one. I got one there by me. Okay. I'm going to teach you another valuable lesson real quick. Alright. You're looking at that Nand. You're like, what the hell? Where's the dot at? Well, believe it or not, this is a coating that Apple places on their Nands. Not all of them, but some. I always notice it's with the Toshibas. So just scratch at the sides. That's not it. And this does come off easier with heat. And as you can see, is it's a Toshiba. It's like that T on right there, it's on the bottom. Alright, you scratch right here. And that doesn't seem to be up. Nope. You scratch right here. I can bet. There it is. Good old dot that we wanted. Alright. Now we're back on track. Alright, so we got flux on there. We got our PCIe. And look at that. Exact fit. And just kind of nudge around. Make sure it's centered in all of this chaos. Alright. She looks centered. Alright, perfect. Alright. So, once again, we need to assess what we're doing here. How hot are we doing? How high airflow? What direction we're doing? But knowing this is a 7 Plus and we addressed this the first time, stay away from that audio IC. Being a 7 Plus, they're already prone to that audio IC disease. So let's stay away from that, and we can save that for another video. So, you get your heatsink on. I'm going to use the big steel block. I'm going to use 365 Celsius heat with 60, well, I'm going to use 70 actually. So we'll do 70 air. I just noticed with larger chips it's a little easier that way. Alright, so keeping that circular motion. And you keep heating it. Kind of do the nudge test. If it doesn't bounce back at you, When you do nudge test, that means it's not ready. See that? I'll show you. Keep eye on my hook. See that? That movement? And it bounces right back at you. It's called nudge test. That means it's ready. Alright, your next steps to go ahead and just clean up the Nand nail. I would scrape away, well, I wouldn't even worry about scraping away the underfill. I would have done that to start with. But this isn't a customer's board, so I didn't go all out on it. Alright, if you guys have any questions or concerns about more videos or something inside the video that you watch that you maybe don't agree with or need recommendations or anything like that, we do have a support form that you can go on and ask those questions. Or you can send me an email at sean.blair@blairstech.com and we can address any issues or concerns that you have. I appreciate you purchasing this course and you have a great day.